The Longsword and the previously reviewed Greatsword actually share the same start in the series. Well, technically they were Greatswords that resemble katanas, but they work the same as a regular Greatsword. But this change was enough for the Longsword to get its own weapon class starting in Monster Hunter Freedom 2. This departure from the Greatsword's family tree meant the Longswords cannot block. But if you think this hampered the Longsword's ability to hunt, you'll be heavily mistaken, sacrificing heavy damage and blocking for fast, hard-hitting attacks and mobility makes up a ton of lost ground. In this episode of Weapons Through the Generations, we're going to slice through the series of Monster Hunter, starting with Monster Hunter Freedom Unite up to Monster Hunter Road to discover how this tail-cutting, teammate-tripping beast of a weapon came to be. Having no shields, no charge attacks, and wide swings, the Longsword makes use of its size and somewhat lightweightness to quickly rack up damage while cutting up tails and making sure the monsters get what's coming to them. But of course, not having a shield means hunters gotta be careful when going in, and be mindful that a mistake will be hard to recover from. Rolls and Fate Slashes are the hunter's main form of getting away from attacks and getting back into position quickly. When it comes to Blade Master damage, some of the weapons are impacted by the points in animation when the blade hits the monster. Notably, the Greatsword and Longsword require the center of the blade to connect with the monster for a 1.05 multiplier. So when attacking, it is best to keep a little distance between you and the monster in order to get the most out of your slashes. With the Longsword sheathed or not, the hunter will step forward and slice whatever is in front of them. Pressing it once more will do another forward slice. But this time, the hunter doesn't move forward. This is a nice quick combo for filling the spirit gauge and boasts excellent reach. This quick stab does not do a ton of damage since its real purpose is chaining the infinite combo. After poking, pressing triangle will do an upward slice. It is also possible to do an upward slice by pressing triangle after rolling. This does less damage than it does in a combo, however. Pressing triangle one final time ends the main combo for the Longsword. It is possible to continue this combo from the start after Fate Slashing. This combo is a bread and butter combo for any hunters wanting to max out their spirit gauge. It can be rolled out of at any point or ended with a Fate Slash. Besides rolling, the Fate Slash is a good move for the Longsword to get out of a situation. This move does not have any iframes, but the hunter can roll afterwards to reposition quickly and to start up their combos. When attacking, the hunter can fill up their spirit gauge. This very special gauge allows the hunter to perform spirit slashes with the R button. Without any spirit gauge, pressing R would do a wide sweep in front of them. With some spirit or a max meter, the hunter could do up to 5 spirit slashes with 3 R inputs. These slashes also benefit from having inbuilt Mind's Eye. On top of that, having the spirit gauge filled would provide a 1.13 attack buff for the Longsword's attacks. You'll know when this buff is applied when your spirit gauge is glowing. Be careful of pressing R the third time, as that attack has 3 swings that you cannot roll out of until the attack is over. It is also possible to slightly extend this combo by incorporating triangle inputs in between some slashes. This could be handy in case the hunter does not have enough spirit gauge to finish a combo. If it is a Blade Master weapon, it will benefit greatly from having a larger sharpness gauge. The Longsword is a much faster weapon than a Greatsword, and thus, with more attacking, it's bound to lose sharpness levels more quickly. So to lessen the amount of sharpening needed to keep peak damage, this will help greatly. Even with the inbuilt Mind's Eye that spirit slashes have, if the hunter cannot build any spirit gauge quickly, then the hunt instantly becomes a bit more rougher than it should be. This could come in pretty handy if there are tails that are simply too hard for the Longsword to cut properly. With its higher attacking speed, having a higher critical chance is a must for the Longsword. Attack up is still a viable option, but having a higher chance to critically strike for 1.2 times damage is pretty strong. Not having a shield can really be a problem for some monsters. Having Evasion Plus increases the amount of iframes in a roll. Even having Evasion Plus 1 can be pretty handy. Evade Disc, on the other hand, doesn't add any iframes, but the roll can cover more distance. Either or both of these skills could be hunt savers of G rank, as it gets saved from otherwise seemingly undodgeable attacks and roars. Earplugs are not needed for those who can roll roars, but it is pretty helpful for monsters that like to yell a lot. Some later game monsters require high-grade earplugs in order to block out their roars, but this could bring a pretty big opening for monsters when they're roaring, since they stay still. The Longsword received its most powerful trait in this generation, spirit gauge progression, along with other quality of life improvements with fluidity with the combos. The Longsword really has split itself away from its heavier counterpart. Before I begin detailing the additions for the Longsword, a quick overview for how the Longsword is controlled using motion controls in Monster Hunter Tri. While underwater, the Longsword isn't really impacted heavily. The only real change is that the Longsword cannot do 2 forward slashes like on land. The swings are a little bit more wider and slower, but it's still a really good weapon to use while fighting Leviathans. When holding the left analog stick or right during phase slashes, the hunter will slice and move in a desired direction. There are still no iframes in this move, but having an option to reposition is a very handy addition. You can only move in the desired direction after an attack. Trying to do a left or right fade slash without attacking first will just move the hunter and then fade slash. At the end of Spirit Combo there is now a roundhouse finisher. This slash moves the hunter forward and ends with the hunter sheathing their weapon. If the forward slash connects with any part of the monster's body, the Spirit Gauge will be upgraded a single tier. The first upgrade has to go into white, then yellow, and then with a third, the sword starts glowing with red. This is the strongest state of the Longsword, but the gauge will quickly deplete over time. Hitting the Spirit Slash again will have it refill or upgrade the gauge again to the next tier. Managing this bar to be fully upgraded can be difficult in harder hunts, but this alone can have the Longsword become a destructive powerhouse, fully capable of surpassing its Freedom Unite counterpart. The Spirit Gauge in Monster Hunter Tribe behaves a little bit differently than it did in 3 Ultimate and Forward Third. First, when the Spirit Gauge is filled, it stays filled even when using Spirit Slashes. Second, when the gauge is lowered, the hunter will lose all their charge. While in 3 Ultimate and Forward Third, the gauge will simply go down a single level. Starting in the 3rd generation, Reckless Abandonment got changed to Critical Eye, ESP got changed to Mind's Eye. This handy skill takes advantage of any monster's weak zones when hit and boosts damage towards it, and generally a good skill to take on every monster with, but some monsters have easier to hit weak zones than others. But the Longsword generally does not have any issues when hitting a specific monster part. Attack up large and 15% affinity when monsters are angry is a huge boost in damage for any weapon. Generally, an excellent skill to have in G rank. With the 4th generation, the Longsword didn't really receive much, other than a mounting strike and 2 new spirit shortcuts. The Longsword got 2 aerial attacks in 4 Ultimate. The first one is by pressing X while in midair. This would do a simple overhead slash that could continue into the regular Longsword combo. The other option is to press R while in midair with the weapon unsheathed. With some Spirit Gauge, this would do a 2-part Spirit Slash combo that can be continued on the ground for a fast gauge upgrade. It is also possible to unsheath into the first part of the Spirit combo while pressing R, X, and A while midair. One of the more useful Longsword combos right here. After a Fade Slash, pressing R would do a Step-In Slash. This will have the same motion as the Spirit 2 Slash and gives a really nice combo shortcut into the rest of the Spirit Slashes and a roundhouse. A very handy way of keeping up the Spirit Gauge. When the Spirit Gauge is downgrading, the hunter will lose all their charge instead of going back to the previous level. But at least in 4 Ultimate, it shows the current bloated attack value and status so the hunter could see their current attack at each Spirit Gauge level. There are posts that recommend having focus for the Longsword to upkeep the Spirit bar, but I already see that on monsters that have long attacking cycles that don't really give the hunter much of a chance to gather Spirit Gauge. It's an option, sure, but there are more desirable skills that would help more that have already been noted in 2nd and 3rd gen. Guild style combos stay unchanged. However, the Spirit Gauge behaves as it did in 3 Ultimate. The gauge downgrades a single level back instead of throwing away the hunter's hard work when the Spirit Gauge runs out. Striker style loses the left and right Fade Slash, and the Spirit Step-In attack, which can make upgrading the Spirit Gauge a little harder for some monsters. Other than that, the Longsword is unchanged. It's pretty much Freedom Unite Longsword with the ability to upgrade the Spirit Gauge. Aerial style allows the hunter to hop forward when rolling, and only allows Spirit Slashes while in the air. So to upgrade the Spirit Gauge, the Spirit combos need to be started while airborne. It will be finished if the combos continue on the ground. Once the hunter gets at least White Gauge, the start of Spirit combos begins with Spirit 3, so it becomes much easier to upkeep Spirit Gauge. Plus, with at least White Gauge, the extended Spirit combo can be done. The hunter cannot do the Spirit Step-In attack. The left and right Fade Slashes are still possible. ADEPT style has Fade Slashes default to the left. It is possible to still Fade Slash to the right, but the hunter cannot Fade Slash backwards. But with a successful ADEPT dodge, the hunter can do a quick slice retaliation with X, and finish the attack with R. Connecting this attack will upgrade the Spirit Gauge. The second hit is very powerful, and arcs over the hunter. Gen use ADEPT counters a little longer than Gen, which is a small change but it can be noticeable in G rank hunts. Valor style takes away Spirit Slashes and Fade Slashing while not in Valor mode. Pressing Y and X would have the hunter slash across and upwards. Pressing X plus A would do a Fade Slash, and pressing R would do a Spirit Slash. Having a filled Spirit Gauge and doing a full Spirit combo after pressing Y is the fastest way of getting into Valor. Once in Valor, the Longsword gets a nice blue glow to their sword, plus a guard point at Spirit 1. It is also possible to unsheath the counter while still in VALOR with R, X, and A. With the SAKURA/Hunter art, it is possible to upgrade the spirit gauge like normal. However, when the Hunter goes into VALOR mode, the gauge will turn blue and overwrite any of the charge that the SAKURA/ gave last. Alchemy style simplifies the Longsword's main combos to X inputs. Pressing A will poke, and pressing it again will do a fade slash to the left out of combos. Other than that, there are no motion values that are changed. An added bonus of having the Alchemy barrel, and in 3 Hunter arts, this style is great for those learning Longsword. The Hunter leaps back, readying their sword and dashes forward. In their wake, many slashes or cuts are left after the strike. Connecting this attack is enough to upgrade the gauge 1 level upwards. Unlocking their innermost potential, the Hunter's spirit gauge is maxed out for a short period of time, allowing them to fight to their limits without using any spirit gauge. A special skill from the Far East, this clears the mind of the user, readying for any incoming attacks and elegantly executing a powerful counter. This Hunter art takes a little longer to get started, but in exchange for the user's green health, to get an attack buff for a short amount of time, health is recovered when the Hunter attacks a monster. Longsword and Affinity go hand in hand, so getting an extra 20% damage per critical strike will mow down anything that stands in your path. This handy skill boosts Affinity per attack that connects with the monster. Any attacks that miss, however, will reset the skill, and Hunter would have to start attacking to get back their Affinity. Monster Hunter World brought in arguably the most powerful weapon in the game. It is at its peak in its generation, and it's no wonder why this weapon is the most used. When sliding down the slope, the Hunter can press triangle to slice upwards into the air. Pressing triangle again would do an overhead swing towards the ground. It is then possible to continue doing the rest of the Longsword combos. Pressing R2 on the other hand will have the Hunter unsheath into his Spirit 3, and upon landing, pressing R2 again will shortcut into the Spirit Roundhouse, upgrading the Spirit gauge. Jumping off a ledge and pressing triangle will do an overhead swing like in for ultimate, and pressing R2 will still shortcut in Spirit 2. Pressing R2 in circle after an attack will have the Hunter turn backwards. If they get hit during this animation, they'll quickly glow blue. So when they make contact with a monster, they will have a filled Spirit gauge. They can also press R2 after their slice to upgrade their Spirit gauge with a quick roundhouse slash. This is the fastest way of upgrading the Spirit gauge in this game. Press of R2 triangle with at least white Spirit gauge, the Hunter would stab forward. If this attack connects with the monster, they will kick off the target and hop off into the air. Pressing triangle here will have the Hunter slice their way down, ending the attack with numerous slices, and the Spirit gauge going down a level. This attack is very powerful, but missing the Hellbreaker will still downgrade the Spirit gauge. So it is a very situational attack that will be put to waste on monsters that move a lot. Plus, the Helmbreaker's damage is dependent on the current Spirit gauge, so for the most damage, doing a Helmbreaker with red gauge is very important. With the Longsword effectively getting a counter, earplugs isn't really needed anymore. The weapon feels a lot more forgiving, so any evasive skills are optional and dependent on the player. Everything else like Affinity, Crit Boost, Weakness Exploit are still the Longsword's go-to skills for damage. When the Hunter attaches himself to an arm-edged monster with a Clutch Claw, you are able to quickly slash your way down with triangle. This would have the monster drop slinger ammo. With the slinger loaded, the slinger will do bursts in the middle of each spirit slash. This way, it can ensure the monster stays still for the roundhouse slash. This fancy new move sheaths the Longsword with the press of R2 and X. Pressing triangle will do a fancy slash forward. If this attack connects, the spirit gauge will rapidly fill up for a limited amount of time. Pressing R2 will do a spirit slash. This is a pseudo counter that will downgrade the spirit gauge if this attack misses. But if this attack connects, this could be comboed with the Helmbreaker afterwards to even more damage. This weapon is actually my guilty pleasure. It feels so wrong sometimes to be able to do so much damage while dancing around a monster. It doesn't help that in Worlds the monster really needs to fight me off in a way I can't just counter to trip it up and deal more damage. It felt kinda clunky in Freemanite, but being able to roll out of most of the combos is a really powerful and helpful tool, since it takes away extra recovery time, similar to how the rolling after Greatsword charge is pretty much standard. I would say the Longsword World felt the same as it did in Generations with ADEPT style. Let's also not forget the guard point that goes into counter in Gen U's VALOR style. Just so many ways to cut off tails and trip over your teammates. The best part about the Longsword is that the fact that it's not very complicated at all. You just need to keep track of 3 things: the monster, your positioning, and most importantly, the sharpness. It's not a perfect weapon by any means, but not having a shield pretty much forces you to have high-grade earplugs for tougher monsters at G rank in order titles, so that you're not getting one-shot after getting roared. And while the Whetstone Reliance isn't as bad as Dual Blades or the Gunlance, make sure to keep a healthy handful in hunts. If you get the chance, experiment with the Longsword. It's perfect for those who don't enjoy slower weapons. The Longsword is great for those learning how to play the game, and for those who already have hundreds upon thousands of hours in the series. It's just a really fun weapon to play with. Until the next episode.